This is Singapore, one of the richest countries with a GDP per capita of more than $60,000. This country has achieved such remarkable growth, and that too without any natural resources. Singapore's success can be defined by three words, which are geography, policies, and people. First, there's geography. Singapore's location gives excellent connectivity to major Asian economies. And once the Suez Canal was completed in 1869, Singapore became even more vital to the British. It was a means for them to gain control of a large portion of Asian trade. So, the British developed a port system for trade, as well as to deploy soldiers in Asia. As a result of its superior geographic position and well-established port infrastructure, Singapore became an excellent place for manufacturing goods. Next, there are the policies. Singapore needed to develop a safe, corruption-free, and low-tax environment in order to attract investors. To make this feasible, the government became more autocratic. Corruption was reduced, law and order had been adequately enforced, and a business-friendly environment was created. These improvements caught the interest of international investors. Unlike its neighbors, where political and economic climates were unpredictable, Singapore was very stable. Finally, there are the people. Singapore's citizens are seen as valuable assets in the country's development. Education, on the other hand, made these assets even greater. As a result of the high amount of foreign investment, the government began to invest in education and skill development programs. They established plenty of technical schools, and paid multinational firms to teach their unskilled workforce. And as the workforce got educated and competent, they started to export high-value items. Singapore's main exports in the 1970s were textiles, clothing, and basic electronics. But by the 1990s, they were engaging in biotech research, pharmaceuticals, integrated circuits, and aerospace engineering. So, this was a quick glimpse of the Singapore economy. To watch the full video, click on the card above. And if you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Thank you.
Hi everyone, today our group will present about marketing environment focusing on macroenvironment economic factor. We choose to look at the example of Singapore because it is one of the most developed economies in Southeast Asia and has many interesting economic issues that affect the business.
In this presentation, we will highlight three main economic issues in Singapore. For each issue, we will also explain how it directly impacts on business that operate in Singapore. So let's get started. First is high cost of living and limited land. Real estate, rentals, and daily expenses are among the world's highest. How it affects on business is increased operating costs such as offices, warehouse, salaries, and distribution. Company must price higher or focus on premium markets.
Next, the strategic geographic location. Singapore sits at one of the most busiest shipping routes. The effect on business, it attracts global trade and logistic companies. Easy market access, but also high competition.
3 is strong human capital, skilled workers, highly educated and skilled workers.
How it affects on business is the businesses benefit from talent pool, encourages innovation, but labor is expensive, and puts pressure on SMEs.
Now, we're gonna pass to our friend.
Sri Lanka is facing its worst economic crisis since its independence. But just how did the situation get this bad? There has been economic mismanagement by successive governments, which created a twin deficit, which indicates its national expenditure exceeds its national income and the country does not produce enough tradable goods and services. But the situation got worse due to a range of factors. In November 2019, Gotabaya Rajapaksa announced sweeping tax cuts before the parliamentary election in a few months. And in April 2021, there was the government's push for organic farming, which hit the farm output. On top of all this, the pandemic severely hit the other sources of income, like the tourism sector and the foreign workers' remittances. The credit rating agencies had downgraded Sri Lanka, locking it out of the international capital markets on which it relied to pay its debt obligations. So it started using its foreign reserves for that, which meant there wasn't enough foreign currency to pay for the essential imports, which resulted in the shortages on the ground.
Good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to talk about the Sri Lanka economic crisis and how it reflects on business.
Sri Lanka faces several crises in 2022. The country ran out of foreign reserve, which means it didn't have enough money to import essential goods like fuel, food and medicine.
The problem happened because of several reasons, such as high government debt, a collapse in tourism after COVID-19, a poor economic policies. Together, these factors pushed the country into its worst crisis in decades.
So factors number 1, fuel and electricity shortage, business shutdowns. One of the biggest problems was the shortage of fuel and electricity. At one point, power cuts lasted up to 15 hours a day. This forced hotels in Colombo and coastal areas to close temporarily. Without electricity, they couldn't run air conditioning, kitchens or basic service. As a result, many foreign tourists cancelled their bookings and Sri Lanka lost millions of dollars in tourism revenue. And it wasn't just hotels. Transportation was also paralyzed. Trucks and buses stopped operating because there was no fuel. This disrupted supply chains, and grocery stores in rural areas couldn't restock products on time.
Move on to the second one is high inflation, rising costs and weak consumer demand. Another major issue was skyrocketing inflation. Prices of essentials like wheat, milk, powder, and rice increased drastically. For small restaurants and food outlets, this was a nightmare. Cooking gas was unavailable and ingredient costs doubled. To survive, SMEs had to raise their prices. But when they raised prices, consumer demand dropped because people's purchasing power was shrinking. This created a vicious cycle where businesses struggled to cover costs while customers bought less.
And last but not least, foreign exchange shortage, import difficulties. Another challenge was the shortage of foreign currency. Without dollars, Sri Lanka couldn't pay for imported goods. This hit businesses hard. For example, manufacturers that rely on imported raw materials had to cut back or completely stop production. Supply chains broke down and companies couldn't meet customers' needs.
Move on to the conclusion. In short, the Sri Lanka economic crisis shows us how deeply businesses are tied to a country's economic stability. Shortage, inflation, and investor flight create a chain reaction that affects every sector.
So it's a reminder that for businesses to grow, they need a stable macroeconomic environment, reliable policies, and consumer confidence.
So, that's all from us. Thank you.